When you look at a modern digital SLR camera, it can be quite daunting, just the number of controls that you have available. But it's worth remembering that for the actual photographic process, there are just 4 main controls. I've added a +1 because most cameras have this additional feature as well. But there are just 4 main controls generally for the photographic process. We have lens focus. So this is where we can adjust the lens, either manually or automatically, to achieve the sharpness within the image in the areas that we want. And this will affect our depth of field and things like that. We have the aperture. This is the hole, the size of the hole within the lens which allows the light through the lens. Now this affects exposure and depth of field, which is the range of sharpness within the image from near objects to far objects. We have shutter speed, and this again affects exposure and the ability to freeze movement within the image, and we call that blurring. Now this could be down to what we call camera shake, where the camera moves relative to the subject, or it could be that the subject, rotating wheels, propeller blades, is rotating or moving relative to the background. So that is blurring. So shutter speed can affect those sort of features. We have a thing called ISO, and this is to do with the sensor speed setting. In the old days it would be the film rating, the speed of the film, but now we can actually adjust the sensor sensitivity, and again this affects exposure. And by changing the sensor's sensitivity to light, we can then apply different apertures and shutter speeds depending on the ambient lighting conditions. So those are the main 4 controls, but we also have an additional control on most cameras, and this is the lens focal length. Digital SLR cameras allow us to change the lenses on our cameras, and most cameras that don't have interchangeable lenses have zoom type lenses fitted, so we can change the focal length. And when you change the focal length, this affects the angle of view, the angle of capture of the scene, and by using this intelligently you can change the perspective, the depth of field, the effects of camera shake, all come into the way the focal length of the lens changes. So that's all there is to it. Just 4 main controls, or everything else that we have on our cameras, and they can be very complex, these controls. All they do is affect the way the camera itself operates. So you've got focusing options, exposure options, image storage, whether it's going to be JPEG or RAW. We have features like live view now, which is the way you can view your images on the back of the camera rather than through the viewfinder. We have options for how each of these controls actually operates. The viewfinder and the back screen viewing options, all of these are to do with how the camera itself operates, not the way it actually takes the photographs, the photographic controls. So when you look at these modern cameras, just be aware that the actual photographic process is very relatively simple, 4 main controls plus 1. And everything else is to do with the way the camera itself operates and the way you want it to operate.